Now, I'm willing to deal with China, but they have to solve their surplus. We have a tremendous deficit problem with China. I do want to solve the deficit problem that we have with China, with the European Union and other nations. And they're going to have to do that. And if they want to talk about that, I'm open to talking.
On TV.
Now, Bill Ackman, who endorsed Trump and has been a very outspoken supporter of elements of the Trump agenda, he is basically pleading with the president to change course. He put out this tweet last night. He said that the president...
lengthy statement, yeah.
It was. Most of his are. But he said that the president has an opportunity on Monday to call a timeout and have the time to execute on fixing an unfair tariff system. He said, alternatively, we are heading for a self-induced economic nuclear winter, and we should start hunkering down. And Kate, we may find out in the next few hours whether or not the president is going to heed these calls.
I mean, according to his team, they're coming. This 90-day pause that he's asking for, there's no sign of it yet. Stand by to stand by. And you have some context also, just putting the beginning of the Trump administration into historical context in terms of the market.
Yeah, it's been atrocious, right? So the S&P 500, since the president was sworn in, has lost 15% of its value. This is the worst start to any presidential term since the S&P 500 launched back in the 1950s. And again, this is being driven by recession fears. We heard Goldman Sachs overnight came out and they bumped up their recession odds. They now say a 45% chance of a recession, although they said it would go even higher if the tariffs kick in.
Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, don't forget to like, subscribe, and throw your stock portfolio directly into a wood chipper. Because today, we're diving into what happens when your president thinks trade war is just a fun little monopoly expansion pack. All right, folks, gather round. It's time for another episode of Trump, the Economic Wreckening. So Bill Ackman, Wall Street's favorite hedge fund oracle and part-time Trump cheerleader, is now begging Trump to stop acting like a toddler with the nuclear codes of international trade. The man who once said yes, Daddy Trump, is now basically tweeting, "Please, for the love of Goldman, stop before we all have to eat beans in bunkers." Ackman warned of a self-induced economic nuclear winter, which is just a polite billionaire way of saying, we are absolutely screwed. He's asking for a 90-day timeout, like Trump is a hyperactive third grader, not the president. And in case you're wondering how things are going, the SINP is down 15 since Trump was sworn in. That's the worst presidential market debut ever since the swipe began. And that includes Nixon, folks. Goldman Sachs just bumped recession odds to 45 and said it'd be worse if the tariffs hit. Spoiler alert, the tariffs are definitely gonna hit. Even Trump's rich friends are terrified. The markets are tanking, and the White House response is basically stand by to stand by. Peak leadership, folks. Peak leadership.
The rapid destruction of the market. Stock futures are plunging this morning once again as the turmoil from President Trump's trade war is rocking markets here in the United States and around the world. Donald Trump's baseline 10% tariff across the board, it went into effect Saturday. And also so many countries are bracing for more as the targeted tariffs that he announced are set to kick in Wednesday. So far today, Hong Kong's main exchange dropped 13%. Taiwan's exchange saw its biggest one-day loss on record. And the S&P is now nearing a bear market defined as a drop of 20% or more from a recent peak. Add to that, billionaire hedge fund manager and Donald Trump supporter Bill Ackman is now somewhat leading Wall Street's backlash to the tariffs, calling Trump's tariff plan a, quote, self-induced economic nuclear winter. Also saying, this is not what we voted for. Facing all of this brutal reality, the president and his team are offering mixed messages on a key question in all of this, which is the president willing to negotiate, or are these tariffs here to stay? Here was the...
All right, let's talk about the economic version of the Hindenburg disaster, also known as Donald Trump's Tariffalooza 2025. Yes, the man who wrote The Art of the Deal has returned to give the global economy a full-body cavity search, just to make sure it's not hiding any unfair trade practices in its GDP. So apparently, at exactly 0 minutes and 4 seconds into this fiscal nightmare, the stock market was already free, falling faster than Trump's approval rating at a climate change summit. Stock futures plunging, Wall Street panicking, and somewhere a MAGA hat is being slowly folded into a bandana of regret. Now, what caused this economic apocalypse? A little something I like to call tariff Tourette, where Trump wakes up, sees a globe, spins it, and picks a country to punish like he's playing Wheel of Misfortune. Congratulations, Taiwan. You've won the privilege of losing your largest one-day stock value ever. You know it's bad when Hong Kong, which has survived British imperialism, Chinese crackdowns, and Rush Hour 2 says, yeah, we're out and drops 13 just to avoid making eye contact with the Dow Jones. But it gets better. See, Trump rolled out a baseline 10 tariff across the board. Because when your economic strategy is make America gasp again, you want to start big. And this isn't just any 10. It's a solid one-size screws. All tariff that hits everyone from your best allies to that guy at the G7 summit he forgot he insulted. And it's not just the SIP gasping for breath. The whole market is basically curled up in the fetal position, whispering it's just a phase. He'll grow out of it. Now here's the kicker. Even Trump's own billionaire hedge fund bros are turning on him. Bill Ackman. Yes, that Bill Ackman, the hedge fund guy who usually makes money off of other people losing money, is calling this plan a self-induced economic nuclear winter. If a hedge fund manager is clutching his pearls, you know it's serious. These are people who call the 2008 crash a rough patch. And the cherry on top, Ackman goes, "This is not what we voted for." Oh, honey, it kind of is. You voted for a guy who thinks tariffs are a personality trait? Who thinks economics is that class Jared Kushner took online? Who thinks balance of trade means he has to keep score with a Sharpie on his golf cart dashboard? But of course, in classic Trump fashion, when the economy's on fire and investors are running for the exits, the administration comes out with the 1-2 punch of confusion and denial. Is the president willing to negotiate? Are these tariffs permanent? Q. Larry Kudlow accidentally saying yes, then no, then melting into a puddle of Ambien and denial? Basically, the White House's response to global panic is, maybe, maybe not. Who's asking? Is it Ken? Then fake news? Look, the morale of the story is simple. You can't play economic chicken with every country on earth and expect to win, especially when your understanding of leverage comes from The Apprentice. So yeah, if you're wondering why your 401k now looks like a GoFundMe page for emotional damage, blame the man who thinks trade deficits are a sign of personal disrespect. Because in Trump's world, if America isn't winning everything, then clearly someone is cheating. Anyway, that's it for today's episode of Stocks in Shock. Don't forget to like, share, and tell your financial advisor you love them, while they're still legally allowed to cry in public.
Okay, look, fear continues to dominate financial markets around the world. And make no mistake, this is all about the president's decision to launch a trade war. Now, this is how bad things are. Futures are down 2%. This is actually good news. This is an improvement because overnight we saw Dow futures were down 4% or so, about 1,500 points. You mentioned the Hang Seng in Hong Kong. This was the worst day for the Hang Seng since 1997 when Asian markets were in complete crisis mode, right? And so this is an indication, though, that futures are going to open with the S&P trading just above what would be a bear market, right, which is that 20% decline. Just for some context here, if the S&P closed in a bear market today, this would be the second fastest bear market in history, second only to 2020 during COVID and surpassing the 1987 crash. Look at this. So this is the S&P 500 so far this year. You can see things were getting a little bit rocky in February and March, and then Liberation Day came last week when the president rolled out his tariffs, and look at this. It's gone basically straight down since then. The S&P 500 lost over $5 trillion in value after Liberation Day. Look at this complete wipeout. We're talking about the only president who could make a global recession sound like a patriotic fireworks show. That's right, folks. Welcome to Liberation Day, Tim, brought to you by Donald J. Tariff. So let's unpack this market meltdown, shall we? Fear, the one true bipartisan emotion, is currently dominating financial markets across the globe. Why? Because Trump decided to fire the opening shot in his very own trade war.
And it turns out when you declare war on literally everyone, markets don't exactly say, thanks, great idea, Commander. Futures are down 2, futures are down 2, and apparently that's good news. When a 2 dip is considered an improvement, that's like saying, well, the house is still on fire, but at least the garage exploded yesterday, so we're trending upward. Meanwhile, the Hang Seng just had its worst day since 1997, back when people still used dial-up and Beanie Babies were a solid investment strategy. That's how hard Trump's tariffs hit. They traveled the Asian market back to the 90s. And here in the good old US of A, the SOP 500 is teetering just above bear market territory, which is what happens when your president treats economic policy like it's a live episode of Survivor. If it drops 20, we officially enter the your retirement plan is now a meme phase. But wait, here comes the historical context. If the SCAP closes in a bear market today, this would be the second fastest collapse in history, second only to COVID, and worse than 1987. You know? The year people learned that Reaganomics was mostly vibes. And the best part? You can see it all in the charts. February and March were bumpy. Then came Liberation Day, Tim. The moment Trump heroically freed American markets from the oppressive burden of value. Since then, the SOP has lost over $5 trillion in value. Yes, you heard that right, $5 trillion. That's every billionaire on earth spontaneously combusting levels of economic loss. But don't worry, Trump's probably tweeting that it's all part of a Ford chess strategy to own the libs, the yuan, and possibly gravity itself. So to recap, the markets are tanking, global panic is trending, and we're all just hostages in Trump's reality show version, of The Price is Wrong. Tune in next week when the White House rolls out Recession Wednesdays, because if you're going to burn the economy down, you might as well make it a weekly special. Anyway, let me know what you think. Like, share, and subscribe if you haven't already. Drop a comment below. I'd love to hear your thoughts. It helps us, it helps the mission, and it helps bring honest conversation to the table.